Caleb Donovan's fist connected with Marcus Webb's jaw before he even knew he'd thrown the punch. The pregnant woman collapsed in the dirt, blood dripping from her split lip, both arms wrapped around her swollen belly. The whole town of Dusty Creek watched from behind closed shutters. Nobody moved. Nobody helped. And Caleb Stone, a man who'd spent 14 years hiding from the world, just made himself the most wanted man in Montana territory. If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to my channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story has traveled. The woman's scream cut through the summer heat like a knife through butter. Caleb Donovan had been in Dusty Creek less than 30 minutes. His pack mule carried 3 months of beaver pelts and wolf skins. His canteen was nearly empty. His throat burned from trail dust. All he wanted was water supplies and a quick exit back to the mountains where people left him alone. But that scream changed everything. He turned toward the sound. A man stood in the middle of Main Street, dragging a pregnant woman by her hair. She was young, maybe 26, with a belly swollen 7 months full. Her gray dress was torn at the shoulder. Blood trickled from her nose onto the parched dirt. The man drew back his boot to kick. Caleb's feet were moving before his mind caught up. Thomas Finch, the general store owner, grabbed his arm. "Don't. Let go. That's Marcus Webb. He owns the biggest cattle ranch in the territory. His brother-in-law runs the bank. The sheriff takes his money. Nobody crosses Marcus." Caleb pulled free. Then nobody's tried hard enough. He walked toward the violence with the steady pace of a man approaching a wounded grizzly. Not fast enough to spook, not slow enough to show fear. Marcus Webb had just drawn back his boot again when Caleb's voice cut across the street. "Step away from her." Marcus turned. He was 38, thick through the chest, with the ruddy face of a man who started drinking at breakfast. His eyes struggled to focus on this stranger who'd appeared from nowhere. "This is my wife. My business." "Your business just became mine." Marcus laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. He released the woman's hair, and she collapsed fully to the ground, still curled around her belly, like she was trying to protect the only thing that mattered. Marcus took 2 steps toward Caleb. "You picked the wrong day, old man." He swung. Caleb had been reading men's movements since before Marcus was born. He saw the telegraph in the shoulder, the weight shift in the hips. He stepped inside the punch and drove his own fist into Marcus's solar plexus with the precision of a man who knew exactly where to hit. Air exploded from Marcus's lungs. Before he could recover, Caleb's left hook caught him on the jaw. The crack echoed off the wooden storefronts. Marcus's legs went out from under him, and he hit the ground like a sack of grain. The street went silent. Caleb turned to the woman. She was staring up at him with eyes that held too much pain to be only physical. Her hands were still locked around her belly. Blood dripped from her nose onto her torn dress. "You hurt, ma'am." She opened her mouth. No sound came. Her whole body trembled. Caleb knelt slowly, making himself less threatening. "Can you stand?" She nodded, but when she tried to rise, her legs buckled. Caleb caught her under the arms and lifted her with the same care he'd use with an injured fawn. She weighed almost nothing, despite the pregnancy. "Please." Her voice was barely audible. "Please don't make it worse. He'll kill you when he wakes up. He'll kill me when you leave." Caleb looked down at Marcus's unconscious form, then back at her terrified face. He saw Eleanor in those eyes. Eleanor who'd begged him to stay home more. Eleanor who'd died while he was 60 miles away following orders. He'd failed her. He'd failed Lily. He'd spent 14 years in the mountains trying to outrun that failure. Not this time. "Then I won't leave." Her eyes went wide. Thomas Finch had crossed the street. His face was a mixture of fear and something that might have been hope. "Bring her to Doc Owens." Thomas's voice shook. "And then, Mr. Donovan, you better decide if you're staying or running, because when Marcus wakes up, this town's going to burn." Caleb lifted the woman more securely in his arms. "What's your name, ma'am?" Ruth. She swallowed hard. Ruth McAllister Webb. She said the last name like an apology. Well, Mrs. Webb, we're going to get you somewhere safe. Then we're going to figure out what comes next. He carried her down Main Street while the town watched from windows and doorways. Nobody helped. Nobody interfered. They just watched this stranger carry their shame in his arms toward the doctor's office at the edge of town. Dr. Henry Owens was 55 years old and looked 70. His office smelled of carbolic acid and old regret. He took one look at Ruth and his face went gray. Put her on the table. Caleb laid her down as gently as he could. Ruth's hands immediately went to her belly again. Doc Owens began his examination. His hands trembled. 3 cracked ribs, concussion, extensive bruising. His voice was clinical, but rage simmered underneath. And she's severely malnourished. How long has this been going on? Ruth. 2 years. Ruth's voice was flat, empty. Since we married. Doc Owens stepped back. His eyes met Caleb's. I tried to help once. 2 years ago, right after they married. When the bruises first appeared, I filed a complaint with Sheriff Briggs. He paused. The next night, someone burned my clinic. Destroyed 5 years of medical supplies, patient records, everything. So you let her suffer. I let her live. Doc's voice cracked. If I intervene again, Marcus will kill her just to prove he can. Better she's alive and beaten than dead and avenged. The words hung in the air. Caleb had heard similar logic before. During the war, officers who looked away from atrocities because reporting them meant risking careers. After the war, lawmen who ignored violence because stopping it was too dangerous. The world ran on such calculations. Good men doing nothing while evil flourished. Caleb had been one of those good men once. Never again. How's the baby? Doc placed his stethoscope against Ruth's belly, moved it, listened. The baby's heartbeat is strong, but if the abuse continues, she'll miscarry. This is her 3rd pregnancy. He looked at Ruth. She lost the first 2 because Marcus beat her. Ruth's sob was small and broken. Caleb watched a tear track down her bruised face. I need this baby. Her whisper filled the room. This is my only hope. Hope for what? Caleb asked gently. That something good can come from all this. That I can be a mother. That my child won't grow up thinking violence is normal. Caleb felt something shift in his chest. He'd heard similar words before. Eleanor pregnant with Lily talking about the kind of world she wanted to bring their daughter into. A world where women didn't fear their husbands. Where children didn't hide from their fathers. Eleanor had believed such a world was possible. She died before seeing it. Doc Owens pulled Caleb aside. You can't stay, Mr. Donovan. Marcus has 8 men who'd kill for him. Bull Henriksen, the Tucker brothers, Ray Decker, others. All armed, all mean. The sheriff won't help you. The law is Marcus's law here. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of being a coward. Doc's eyes were wet. Because Ruth deserves better. And because you're the first person in 2 years who's had the spine to stand up to Marcus Webb. He paused. But spine won't stop bullets. Leave tonight. Leave. Get back to your mountains while you still can. Caleb turned to look at Ruth. She was staring at the ceiling, one hand on her belly, tears running silently into her hair. Broken. Alone. Exactly like Eleanor must have been during those final days when fever took her and Caleb was 60 miles away following orders. He couldn't save Eleanor. He couldn't save Lily. But Ruth was here now. Present tense instead of past. I'm staying. Doc's eyes widened. You'll die. Maybe. But I spent 14 years dying in the mountains anyway. At least, this way it'll mean something. Thomas Finch led Caleb to the livery stable on the north end of town. A back room, barely larger than a closet. a cot, and a small stove. "You can stay here. My grandson Daniel will bring food and water. He's 17. Good boy. Knows how to keep quiet." "Who else might stand with me?" Thomas was quiet for a long time. "There's Maggie Porter, runs the boarding house, lost her daughter 4 years back. Girl ran away to escape Marcus's advances. Maggie's been waiting for someone to stand up to him ever since." "Anyone else?" "Maybe Doc, though he's scared. Maybe Sheriff Briggs's conscience if you can find it. He's got a 10-year-old daughter. Every time he looks at her he sees Ruth's bruises, but he takes Marcus's money all the same." "Not much of an army." "No, sir, but it's more than Ruth's had for 2 years." A sound outside made them both freeze. Heavy footsteps. The door opened without a knock. The man who filled the frame was a wall of muscle and scar tissue. 6'5", arms like tree trunks, small eyes that held the intelligence of a bull preparing to charge. Bull Henriksen looked at Caleb without blinking. "You the man who hit Marcus?" "I'm the man who stopped him from beating his pregnant wife." Bull's expression didn't change. "Marcus wants to see you. Tomorrow. Noon. Main Street." "Tell Marcus I'll be there." Bull nodded slowly. "He wants you to know something else. Ruth's his wife, his property under law. The baby's his too, no matter who planted the seed." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "When it's born, he's taking it. You interfere, you die. Ruth runs, she dies. Anyone helps either of you, their house burns." Bull paused. "You got 3 choices, Mountain Man. Leave tonight, bring Ruth back, or die tomorrow. There's a 4th option." "Yeah, what's that?" "Marcus leaves Ruth alone and I leave town. Everyone wins." Bull's laugh was like rocks grinding together. "Marcus don't negotiate with strangers." "Then tell him to come talk to me himself. Tomorrow, noon, Main Street." Bull stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and left. Thomas released a breath. "You just challenged Marcus Webb to a gunfight in front of his own town." "No, I challenged him to a conversation. If he brings guns, that's his choice." "They'll kill you." "Maybe, but I'll make them earn it." Caleb sat in the small room cleaning his rifle by lamplight. A Sharps .50 caliber, the same weapon he'd carried as an Army scout. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. A woman entered. 60 years old, steel-gray hair, eyes that had seen too much. Maggie Porter didn't wait for an invitation. "You're the fool who hit Marcus Webb." "I'm the man who stopped him from beating a pregnant woman." Maggie studied him. "My daughter's name was Sarah. She was 20 when Marcus decided he wanted her. She refused. He persisted. One night he cornered her behind the saloon." Her voice never wavered. "Sarah left town the next morning, headed to San Francisco. I got one letter saying she was safe. Then nothing. That was 4 years ago. I don't know if she's alive or dead, but I know Marcus Webb destroyed her life as surely as if he'd killed her. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't help." Maggie leaned forward. "But action does. Thomas says you're planning to face Marcus tomorrow, that you're not running." "That's right. Then you're either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both." She pulled a small derringer from her pocket and placed it on the table. "This was my husband's. He carried it in the war. If tomorrow goes bad, you'll need something more than courage." Caleb looked at the gun. "I appreciate it, ma'am, but I'm not planning on this being a gunfight." "Plans change." Maggie stood. "There are 6 of us in this town who are tired of being afraid. Me, Thomas, Doc Owens, Daniel Finch, and 2 others. We can't fight Marcus's men openly, but we can help from the shadows. Food, information, a place to hide if you need it." "Why help me?" "You don't know me." "Because you did what we should have done 2 years ago. You saw wrong and you stopped it. That makes you either a hero or a fool." She moved to the door. "And right now this town needs both." She paused. "One more thing. Sheriff Briggs came by my boarding house tonight. Wanted to know about you. I told him you were just a drifter passing through, What did he say? He said he hoped that was true. Because if you stayed, he'd have to choose sides, and he wasn't sure which side his conscience would pick. Is that a warning or a promise? Both. Maggie opened the door. Get some rest, Mr. Donovan. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. After she left, Caleb took out the wedding ring Eleanor had given him on their wedding day. He'd carried it for 14 years, never worn it, just kept it in his pocket like a wound he couldn't stop touching. He thought about Eleanor, about Lily, about the promises he'd made and broken, about the 14 years he'd spent in the mountains trying to forget that failure was permanent. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe every day was a chance to make a different choice. To be a different man. Tomorrow at noon, Marcus Webb would come for him. There would be violence. Maybe death. Probably both. The smart thing would be to saddle up tonight and ride back to the mountains where life was simple, and promises couldn't be broken because there was no one left to make them to. But Caleb had done the smart thing 14 years ago. He'd followed orders. He'd done his duty. And Eleanor and Lily had died anyway. This time he'd do the right thing instead, even if it killed him, especially if it killed him, because dying for something was better than living for nothing. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in 14 years fell asleep without seeing their ghosts. Morning came with heat that promised to punish. Caleb woke to find a tray of food outside his door. Bread, cheese, coffee still warm. A note in careful handwriting, "Eat. You'll need your strength. Daniel." He ate slowly, watching Dusty Creek through the small window. The town moved with the careful choreography of people who'd learned to avoid trouble. At 10 o'clock, Doc Owens appeared at his door. "Ruth's asking for you." Caleb followed him through the back streets to a small room above Maggie Porter's boarding house. Ruth sat propped against pillows, both hands resting on her swollen belly. The bruises on her face had darkened overnight. Purple and black now instead of red. But her eyes were clearer than yesterday. "Mr. Donovan?" "Ma'am." "Bull. Maggie told me what you said to Bull Henriksen last night, that you're meeting Marcus at noon." "Yes, ma'am." Ruth's hands tightened on her belly. "He'll kill you." "Maybe." "Why?" Her voice cracked. "Why would you die for a woman you don't know, for a baby that isn't even yours?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down in the chair beside her bed. 14 years ago, I had a wife named Eleanor and a daughter named Lily. She was 6 years old, had her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness. Ruth waited. I was an Army scout, good at my job, maybe too good. They kept sending me on longer missions, farther from home. I kept going because duty mattered, because orders mattered. He paused. Eleanor got sick, typhoid fever. She wrote me letters begging me to come home. But I was 60 miles away tracking a war party that turned out to be nothing but shadows. What happened? I got home 3 days too late. Found Eleanor in our bed. Found Lily beside her. Both of them cold. Caleb's voice was steady, but his hands weren't. The neighbors said Eleanor called my name right up until the end, said Lily kept asking where her daddy was. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. I buried them on a hill overlooking the valley. Then I walked into the mountains and didn't come out for 14 years. Caleb met her eyes. I couldn't save them. I wasn't there when they needed me. But you're here now. And I'll be damned if I make the same mistake twice. Ruth reached out and took his hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Mr. Donovan, I need to tell you something. Before you face Marcus. Something that might change your mind about helping me. Nothing's going to change my mind. This might. Ruth took a shaky breath. The baby I'm carrying. It might not be Marcus's. The room went very still. Caleb's expression didn't change. Go on. 4 months ago, Marcus went to Billings for 3 weeks, cattle business. While he was gone, a carpenter came through Dusty Creek. His name was Samuel Hartley. He was kind. He listened to me. He saw me as a person, not property. She paused, shame and defiance warring on her face. We found comfort in each other. 3 weeks. It was wrong. I know it was wrong, but I was so lonely. And Samuel made me feel human again. Where's Samuel now? Gone. Continued west to Oregon Territory. I have no way to contact him. Ruth's grip on his hand tightened. But if you're truly staying, if you're truly going to help me, you need to know what you're protecting. I'm not some innocent victim. I'm an adulteress carrying another man's child while married to a monster who will kill us both if he learns the truth. Caleb studied her face. No judgment, just assessment. Does Marcus know? He suspects. Sometimes he looks at me like he knows, counts back the weeks, remembers he was in Billings. Ruth's voice dropped to a whisper. That's why the beatings have gotten worse. That's why he wants the baby. Not because he loves it, but because he can't stand the idea of being made a fool. Ma'am, I've killed men. I've watched good people die while bad people prospered. I've failed everyone I ever promised to protect. Caleb gently squeezed her hand. You finding a moment of kindness in a life of pain doesn't shock me. It makes you human. Ruth's tears spilled over. You rest, Caleb said, standing. I've got a conversation to have with your husband. Mr. Donovan. Ruth's voice stopped him at the door. Caleb. He turned. Thank you for not judging me. Judgment's above my pay grade, ma'am. I'm just trying to do what's right. He left her there crying softly into her pillow, one hand still pressed against the child that might or might not belong to the man who wanted them both dead. Caleb found Thomas Finch waiting at the bottom of the stairs. You heard? Caleb asked. I heard enough. Thomas's face was troubled. Changes things, doesn't it? Changes nothing. Marcus finds out that baby ain't his. He won't just kill Ruth. He'll burn this whole town to prove a point. Then we make sure he doesn't find out. Thomas shook his head. You're either the bravest man I ever met or the craziest. Can't it be both? Before Thomas could answer, Daniel came running down the street. 17 years old, all long limbs, and barely contained energy. Grandpa Mr. Donovan Marcus just rode into town. He's got all 8 of his men with him. They're setting up at the saloon. Caleb checked his pocket watch. 11:30. He's early. He's making a statement, Thomas said grimly. Wants the whole town to see him waiting. Wants everyone to know you're walking into a trap. Then let's not keep him waiting. Caleb walked toward Main Street with the steady pace of a man who'd made peace with what was coming. Thomas followed at a distance. Daniel ran ahead to warn the others. The town square was empty when Caleb arrived. Every door closed. Every shutter latched. But he could feel eyes watching from every window. Marcus Webb stood in front of the saloon with his 8 men arranged behind him like a wall of flesh and iron. Bull Henriksen, the Tucker brothers Cole and Wade, Ray Decker, and 4 others Caleb didn't recognize. Marcus's jaw was swollen where Caleb had hit him yesterday. His eyes burned with the kind of rage that comes from wounded pride. You should have left, old man. Maybe, but I'm still here. Marcus spat in the dirt. You think you're some kind of hero, coming into my town, touching my wife, making me look weak. I think I'm a man who saw wrong and stopped it. Nothing heroic about that, just human. She's mine. Marcus's voice rose. The baby's mine, under law, under God. She belongs to me. People don't belong to people. We fought a war about that. Marcus laughed. It was an ugly sound. You want to fight a war over some used-up whore and a baby that probably ain't even mine? Caleb's eyes narrowed. What makes you say that? I ain't stupid mountain man. I know when I was in Billings. I know when she started showing. Marcus's grin was cruel. Some carpenter came through town while I was gone. Stayed at Maggie's boarding house. Spent a lot of time helping Ruth with repairs. Behind Marcus Bull, Henriksen shifted uncomfortably. So here's what's going to happen, Marcus continued. You're going to die. Ruth's going to come home. And when that bastard baby is born, I'm going to drown it in the horse trough while she watches. Then I'm going to remind her who she belongs to." Something cold settled in Caleb's chest. Last chance, Marcus. Walk away. Let Ruth go. Start over somewhere else. Walk away. Marcus's face twisted. From my own property. From my own town. He drew his pistol. I don't walk away from anything, old man. Everything I have I took. And I ain't giving any of it back. Then I reckon we're done talking. Marcus raised his pistol. A rifle shot cracked across the square. Marcus's hat flew off his head. A neat hole punched through the crown. Everyone froze. On the boarding house roof, Maggie Porter worked the bolt on her Winchester. Next one goes through your skull, Marcus. Marcus's face went pale, then red, then purple. You crazy old bitch. Crazy enough to pull this trigger. Maggie's voice was steady. You killed my daughter's future. You destroyed Ruth's life. You've been terrorizing this town for 5 years. It ends today. You're outnumbered woman. You and this drifter against 8 armed men. 9. Sheriff Walter Briggs stepped out from the alley beside the general store. He wore his badge and carried his pistol. His hands were shaking, but his voice wasn't. Drop the gun, Marcus. Marcus's head snapped around. Walter, the hell you doing? My job, for once. I pay your salary. Not anymore. Briggs took another step forward. I've got a daughter, Marcus. She's 10 years old. Every night when I tuck her in, I see Ruth's bruises. I hear her crying, and I wonder what kind of world I'm building for my girl. You're choosing him over me, some stranger over a man who's made you rich. I'm choosing what's right over what's easy. Marcus looked around at his men. Kill them. Kill them all. Nobody moved. Bull Henriksen spoke first. Boss, with respect, this ain't what we signed on for. Beating up drunks and scaring farmers is one thing. Gunfight in the middle of Main Street with the sheriff on the other side, that's something else. I'm ordering you. And I'm declining. Bull took a step back. I've done a lot of things I ain't proud of, but I ain't dying for your pride. Cole Tucker nodded slowly. Me neither. One by one, Marcus's men stepped away from him, holstered their weapons, moved to the edges of the square. Marcus stood alone, pistol still raised, face contorted with disbelief. You cowards, you yellow-bellied cowards. Drop the gun, Marcus, Briggs said again. It's over. For a long moment, Marcus didn't move. His eyes darted from Caleb to Briggs to Maggie on the roof, calculating odds, measuring distances. Then his shoulders slumped. The pistol clattered to the dirt. This ain't over, Marcus said quietly. You hear me, mountain man? This ain't over. You took everything from me. My wife, my men, my reputation. I will make you pay. Maybe. Caleb walked forward and kicked the pistol away. But not today. Briggs moved in with handcuffs. Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for assault, attempted murder, and about a dozen other charges I'll think of later. You can't arrest me. I own this town. Not anymore. They led Marcus toward the small jail at the edge of town. His threats echoed off the wooden storefronts, growing fainter with distance. Caleb stood in the middle of Main Street, surrounded by the smell of dust and gun oil and the strange aftermath of violence that wasn't. Thomas appeared at his elbow. That was not what I expected. Me neither. You think it's really over? Caleb watched Marcus being dragged toward the jail, still screaming, still threatening. No, he said quietly. Men like Marcus don't give up. They wait. They plan. They come back when you're not expecting it. So what do? We stay ready. Maggie climbed down from the roof, rifle still in hand. Ruth needs to know what happened. She's probably worried sick. I'll go, Caleb said. He found Ruth exactly where he'd left her, sitting up in bed, with both hands pressed to her belly. Her face was drawn with anxiety. I heard gunshots. Just one. Maggie put a hole in Marcus's hat. Ruth's eyes went wide. Is anyone hurt? No. Marcus is in jail. His men abandoned him. Sheriff Briggs finally grew a conscience. Jail? Ruth's voice trembled. Marcus is in jail. For now. Ruth covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. For a moment, Caleb thought she was crying. Then he realized she was laughing. 2 years, she gasped. 2 years I've been praying for someone to stop him. 2 years of bruises and broken bones and terror. And you just walked into town and ended it in 2 days. It's not ended, ma'am. Marcus will find a way out. Men like him always do. But for right now, he's in a cell. For right now, I'm safe. Ruth looked up at him with shining eyes. For right now, I can breathe. Caleb felt something shift in his chest, something that had been frozen for 14 years beginning to thaw. You should rest. Doc says the baby needs you calm. Stay, please. Ruth reached for his hand. Just for a while. I don't want to be alone. Caleb hesitated. Then he sat down in the chair beside her bed. Tell me about Lily, Ruth said softly. Tell me about your daughter, or... Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to speak. Lily was 6 years old. She had her mother's eyes, brown like chocolate, and her mother's laugh. This high, bright sound that made you smile even when you didn't want to. What did she like to do? She collected feathers. Every bird she saw, she wanted a feather from it. Had a whole box full of them. Blue jays, cardinals, hawks. Once she found an eagle feather by the river, carried it around for weeks like it was made of gold. Ruth smiled. She sounds wonderful. She was. Caleb's voice grew rough. She used to wait for me by the gate when I came home from scouting. Could hear my horse from half a mile away, she said. Always had 100 questions. What did you see, Daddy? Any bears? Any wolves? Any Indians? What did you tell her? Mostly lies. Made the mountains sound magical instead of dangerous. Made the wolves friendly and the bears curious. Didn't want her to be scared of the world. Caleb paused. Now I wonder if I should have told her the truth. Maybe if she'd known how dangerous things could be, she would have... I don't know. Done something different when the fever came. That's not how fever works, Caleb. I know, but guilt doesn't care about logic. They sat in silence for a while. Ruth's hand warm in his, the afternoon heat pressing against the windows. I want to name my daughter Rose, Ruth said suddenly. Rose. After the wild roses that grow by the river. My mother used to pick them when I was a child. Said they were proof that beautiful things could grow even in harsh places. That's a good name. If it's a girl... Ruth's hand moved to her belly. Doc thinks it's a girl. Says he can tell by the way I'm carrying. What will you do after the baby comes? Ruth was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I can't stay here. Too many memories. Too much pain. But I have nowhere else to go. You could go to Oregon. Find Samuel. And tell him what? That I'm carrying a baby that might be his, that I was married to a monster who beat me for 2 years. Ruth shook her head. Samuel deserves better than my baggage. Everyone's got baggage, ma'am. The question is whether you find someone willing to help you carry it. Before Ruth could respond, the door burst open. Daniel stood in the doorway, face pale. Mr. Donovan, you need to come quick. What's wrong? It's Marcus. He escaped. Caleb was on his feet instantly. How? His brother-in-law, the one who runs the bank. He came to the jail with a court order. Said Marcus was being held illegally. Sheriff Briggs tried to argue, but the judge signed the order and everything. Daniel's voice shook. Marcus walked out of there laughing. Said he was going to burn this whole town to the ground. Ruth's hand flew to her mouth. No. Where is he now? Caleb demanded. Headed to his ranch. Said he was going to gather his men. The real ones. Not the locals. Cowboys from out of territory who'll do anything for money. Caleb turned to Ruth. You need to leave. Tonight. Leave. And go where? Anywhere that isn't here. Helena, Virginia City. Somewhere Marcus can't find you. I can't travel. The baby's better off born on a trail than dead in this town. Ruth's face went white, but she nodded slowly. Maggie will help you pack, Caleb said. Thomas will get a wagon ready. Daniel, can you guide them through the mountains? Yes, sir. I know every trail from here to Virginia City. Good. You leave at midnight. Take the old mining road. Marcus won't expect you to go that way. Ruth grabbed his arm. What about you? Caleb met her eyes. I'm going to have another conversation with Marcus Webb, and this time we're going to finish it. He walked out into the afternoon heat, leaving Ruth with tears streaming down her face and her hands pressed against the child she was determined to save. Thomas was waiting in the street. You heard? Caleb asked. I heard. Marcus is gathering men. Could have 20-30 cowboys by tomorrow, all armed, all mean. Then we need to move fast. We need to run. All of us. Get out of Dusty Creek while we still can. And let Marcus win. Caleb shook his head. I've spent 14 years running from things. I'm done running. This isn't courage, Caleb. This is suicide. Maybe. Caleb checked his rifle. But at least it'll mean something. Doc Owens appeared from his office medical bag in hand. Ruth told me she's leaving tonight. Her heart isn't strong enough for travel. The pregnancy has put too much strain on her system. What are you saying? I'm saying if she goes into labor on the trail, there's a good chance she'll die. The baby, too. Caleb closed his eyes. Every choice led to death. Stay and face Marcus with almost no allies. Run and risk Ruth dying on the trail. He thought about Eleanor, about the choice he'd made 14 years ago to follow orders instead of following his heart. He'd chosen duty then. This time, he chose different. Get Ruth ready to travel. Load the wagon with everything she might need. Food, water, medical supplies. Caleb, Doc started. I know the risks, but staying here is certain death. The trail is maybe death. I'll take maybe over certain any day. What about Marcus? Caleb looked toward the horizon, where dust clouds were already rising from the direction of Marcus's ranch. I'll buy you time. Get Ruth as far as you can. Don't stop until you reach Virginia City. How much time can one man buy against 30? Caleb smiled. It wasn't a happy expression. I guess we're about to find out. He walked toward the livery stable to saddle his horse. Behind him, Doc Owens began shouting orders. Maggie appeared with blankets and supplies. Thomas hitched up his strongest wagon. Daniel loaded water barrels and ammunition. The town of Dusty Creek, which had spent 5 years being afraid, was finally fighting back. And Caleb Donovan, who had spent 14 years dying in the mountains, was finally ready to live. Even if living meant dying for something worth dying for. He mounted his horse and rode toward Marcus Webb's ranch, toward the showdown that had been building since the moment he threw that first punch. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of red and orange, like fire, like blood, like the end of something and the beginning of something else. Caleb rode hard toward the Webb Ranch, dust rising behind him like a storm. He didn't have a plan. Plans required time, information, allies. He had none of those things. What he had was a rifle, a pistol, a knife, and 14 years of learning how to survive when survival seemed impossible. That would have to be enough. The ranch appeared over the ridge just as the sun touched the horizon. Even from a distance, Caleb could see the activity. Horses tied to fence posts, men moving between buildings, torches being lit against the coming darkness. More men than he expected. 20, maybe 25. Thomas had been right. This wasn't a posse. This was an army. Caleb dismounted and tied his horse behind a cluster of rocks. He moved forward on foot, using the fading light as cover. A voice stopped him cold. "That's far enough, mountain man." Caleb turned slowly. Bull Henriksen stood behind him, pistol drawn. The big man's face was unreadable in the dying light. "You following me?" Caleb asked. "Following you, warning you, take your pick." "Warning me about what?" "About what you're walking into." Bull holstered his pistol. "Marcus has 32 men down there. Cowboys from Wyoming, gunfighters from Colorado. Men who kill for money and don't ask questions. 32. His brother-in-law wired every outlaw territory between here and Denver. Promised them $500 each to burn Dusty Creek to the ground." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" Bull was quiet for a moment. "Because I've done a lot of bad things for Marcus Webb. Things I ain't proud of. Things that keep me up at night." He met Caleb's eyes. "But I ain't killing a pregnant woman. And I ain't burning down a town full of innocent people. You switching sides. I'm switching to the only side I should have been on from the start, my own conscience." Caleb studied the big man's face, saw something there he hadn't expected. Shame, regret, the desperate need for redemption that Caleb recognized because he saw it in his own mirror every morning. "You know the layout down there?" "Know every inch of it. Worked for Marcus for 6 years." "Then show me how to hurt him." Bull nodded slowly. "The horses. 32 men need horses. Without them, they're stuck at the ranch. Can't chase nobody." "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "Stampede." Bull's smile was grim. "Won't stop Marcus forever. But it'll buy your people time to get clear." "How do we start a stampede?" "Fire. Horses hate fire more than anything." Bull pointed toward the western edge of the ranch. "There's a hay barn on that side. Been dry as bone all summer. One torch and the whole thing goes up. Marcus's men. Most of them are in the bunkhouse, drinking, celebrating the money they're about to make. They won't react fast enough to stop the horses." Caleb checked his rifle. "Let's move." They circled wide, staying low, using the darkness as an ally. The ranch grew larger as they approached. Voices drifted toward them. Laughter. The clink of bottles. The sounds of men who thought they'd already won. Bull led Caleb to the hay barn on the western edge. The structure was old-weathered, stuffed full of dried grass and summer straw. "You got matches?" Bull asked. Caleb pulled a box from his pocket. "Never go anywhere without them." "Then light her up. I'll handle the corral gate." Caleb struck a match. The flame flickered in the darkness, small and fragile, and full of terrible potential. He touched it to the hay. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a spark caught, spread, grew. Within seconds, the barn was burning. The horses started screaming. Bull threw open the corral gate. 40 horses thundered out into the night, driven mad by the fire and the smoke, and the ancient fear that lived in every animal's blood. Men came pouring out of the bunkhouse, shouting, confused, stumbling over each other in the darkness. Some ran for water. Some ran for the horses. Most just ran in circles, not knowing what to do. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. "It's him! It's the mountain man! Find him! Kill him!" Caleb was already moving. He slipped between buildings, staying ahead of the search parties heading back toward the rocks where he'd left his horse. A gunshot cracked. Dirt exploded near his feet. "There!" someone shouted. "By the smokehouse!" Caleb dove behind a water trough. Bullets slammed into the wood, sending splinters flying. He returned fire blindly, more to suppress than to hit. Bull appeared beside him, breathing hard. "We need to go. Now." "Working on it." 3 men came around the corner of the smokehouse. Caleb dropped 2 of them before they could raise their weapons. The third dove for cover. "This way!" Bull grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the trees. They ran. Behind them, the ranch was in chaos. The hay barn collapsed in a shower of sparks. Horses screamed in the distance. Men shouted contradictory orders. And Marcus Webb's voice rose above it all, screaming for blood. They reached the rocks where Caleb had left his horse. Bull had his own mount tied nearby. "That bought your people maybe 4 hours," Bull said, mounting up. "Maybe 6 if Marcus has trouble rounding up the horses. Then we need to catch up to them." They rode hard through the darkness, following the old mining road that Daniel had said he would take. The moon rose full and bright, illuminating the trail ahead. After an hour, Caleb spotted wagon tracks in the dirt. "They came this way. Moving fast." "Fast enough." Before Caleb could answer, a sound reached them through the night air. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. A woman screaming. Caleb kicked his horse into a gallop. The wagon had stopped in a small clearing surrounded by rocks and scrub brush. Thomas stood guard with his ancient pistol. Daniel had a rifle trained on the darkness. Maggie was nowhere to be seen. Neither was Ruth. "What happened?" Caleb demanded, throwing himself off his horse. "It's Ruth." Thomas's face was gray. "Her water broke about an hour ago. Doc says the baby's coming. Now the baby's coming now. Can't stop it. Something about the stress triggering early labor." Thomas's hands were shaking. "Doc's with her behind those rocks. He says it doesn't look good." Caleb pushed past him and ran toward the screaming. He found Ruth on a blanket spread over the hard ground. Doc Owens knelt between her legs, face grim with concentration. Maggie held Ruth's hand, murmuring words of comfort that did nothing to ease the agony twisting Ruth's features. "Caleb." Ruth's eyes found his. "Caleb, something's wrong." Doc looked up. "The baby's positioned wrong. Feet first instead of head first. I need to try to turn it, but out here without proper equipment." "Can you do it?" "I don't know." Doc's voice cracked. "I've never done this. I've only read about it." "Then you'll have to learn fast." Caleb knelt beside Ruth and took her hand. "You hear me, Ruth? You're going to be fine. Both of you are going to be fine." "I'm scared." Her whisper was barely audible over her own ragged breathing. "I'm so scared." "I know, but I made you a promise, and I intend to keep it." Another contraction hit. Ruth screamed, her whole body arching off the ground. Caleb held her hand through it, feeling the bones grind together in her grip. "I need to work," Doc said. "This is going to hurt." What followed was something Caleb would remember for the rest of his life. Ruth's screams, Doc's desperate efforts, Maggie's quiet prayers, the smell of blood and sweat and fear. And then after what felt like hours, a different sound. A baby's cry. "It's a girl," Doc breathed. "My God, it's a girl." He lifted the infant into the moonlight. Tiny, perfect, covered in blood and screaming with healthy lungs. "Ruth." Caleb squeezed her hand. "Ruth, do you hear that? It's your daughter." Ruth's eyes fluttered open. The pain was still there, but something else had joined it. Wonder, joy, the desperate hope of a woman who'd lost everything and just gotten something back. "Let me see her." Maggie took the baby from Doc, cleaned her quickly with a cloth, and placed her in Ruth's arms. Ruth looked down at her daughter's face. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Rose," she whispered. "Her name is Rose." The moment was shattered by Daniel's shout from the wagon. "Riders coming fast." Caleb was on his feet instantly. How many? Hard to tell. At least 10. Maybe more. Marcus? Has to be. Nobody else would be riding this trail at night. Caleb turned to Doc. "Can Ruth travel?" "She just gave birth. She's lost blood. Her heart is weak." Doc shook his head. "Moving her could kill her. Staying here will definitely kill her." Ruth's voice cut through the argument. "I can move." Everyone turned to look at her. Ruth was struggling to sit up. Baby Rose clutched against her chest. Her face was white as chalk, but her eyes blazed with determination. "I didn't survive 2 years with Marcus Webb just to die in a ditch. I didn't bring this baby into the world just to watch her father kill her." She met Caleb's eyes. "Help me to the wagon." Caleb looked at Doc. "It's her choice," Doc said quietly. "And she's right. Staying means certain death. Moving means maybe death. Maybe is better." Caleb lifted Ruth as gently as he could. She gasped in pain but didn't cry out. Baby Rose made soft sounds against her mother's chest, already learning what it meant to be quiet when danger was near. They loaded into the wagon. Thomas took the reins. Daniel rode ahead to scout the trail. Caleb and Bull fell back to cover their retreat. The riders appeared over the ridge just as the wagon started moving. Marcus Webb led them, his face twisted with rage even in the moonlight. Behind him rode at least 15 men, all armed, all hungry for the money that killing these people would bring. "There!" Marcus screamed. "They've got Ruth, run them down!" Caleb raised his rifle and fired. The shot took the lead rider out of his saddle. The others scattered, then regrouped, charging forward again. Bull fired twice. 2 more men went down. "We can't hold them," Bull shouted. "There's too many." "Then we slow them down." Caleb worked the bolt, fired again. Another rider fell. "Buy the wagon time to get clear." The trail narrowed as it climbed into rockier terrain. The wagon bounced and lurched over the rough ground. Inside, Ruth clutched her baby and prayed to every god she could name. Caleb and Bull fought a running retreat, firing from cover, falling back, firing again. They took down 6 more riders before their ammunition ran low. "I'm almost out," Bull shouted. "Me too." Caleb had maybe 5 rounds left. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Marcus's voice echoed off the rocks. "Give it up, mountain man. You can't win this. Give me my wife and I'll let you live." "She's not your wife anymore. The law says different." "Then the law is wrong." A bullet whizzed past Caleb's ear. Another struck the rock beside him, sending stone chips into his face. He was going to die here. The realization settled over him with strange calm. He'd known it was a possibility from the moment he threw that first punch in Dusty Creek. Maybe even before that. Maybe from the moment he rode into town and saw a pregnant woman being beaten in the street. Some things were worth dying for. He just wished he could have seen Ruth safe first. A new sound reached his ears. Hoofbeats. Coming from ahead, not behind. For a terrible moment, Caleb thought Marcus had sent men to cut them off. Then Sheriff Walter Briggs came charging around the bend, badge gleaming in the moonlight, rifle in hand. Behind him rode a dozen men from Dusty Creek, farmers, shopkeepers, men who'd spent 5 years being afraid and had finally decided they'd had enough. "Need some help," Briggs shouted. Caleb almost laughed. "You're a sight for sore eyes, Sheriff." The reinforcements changed everything. Marcus's hired guns suddenly found themselves outgunned and outflanked. The ones who'd survived Caleb and Bull's retreat started looking for ways out instead of ways in. "Stand and fight!" Marcus screamed. "I'm paying you to fight! You ain't paying us to die!" one of them shouted back. He wheeled his horse and rode into the darkness. Others followed. Within minutes, Marcus Webb sat alone on his horse, surrounded by the bodies of his hired men and the guns of his former victims. "It's over, Marcus," Briggs said. "Surrender." "Over." Marcus laughed. It was a wild, broken sound. "Nothing's over. You think you've won. You think this changes anything." He drew his pistol. "Marcus, don't." Briggs started, but Marcus wasn't aiming at the sheriff. He spurred his horse forward, charging toward the wagon where Ruth sat with her newborn daughter. "If I can't have her, nobody will." Caleb moved without thinking. He threw himself in front of Marcus's horse, reaching for the reins. The animal reared, screaming. Marcus's shot went wild, punching into the night sky. Caleb grabbed Marcus's arm and pulled. They hit the ground together, rolling through the dirt, fighting for the pistol between them. Marcus was younger, heavier, but Caleb had 14 years of rage and grief and guilt driving his fists. He got on top. His hands found Marcus's throat. "You beat her," Caleb growled. "You terrorized her. You killed her babies. You tried to destroy everything good in her life." Marcus's face was going purple. His hands clawed at Caleb's wrists, weakening by the second. "Caleb." Ruth's voice reached him through the red haze. "Caleb, stop." He didn't stop. "Caleb, please. You're not like him. Don't become like him." Caleb's hands tightened. One more squeeze. That's all it would take. One more moment of pressure, and Marcus Webb would never hurt anyone again. Rose needs to grow up knowing that good men exist, that violence isn't the only answer, that mercy is possible even when it isn't deserved. Ruth's voice broke. "Please, Caleb, show her what a good man looks like." Caleb's hands stopped. He looked down at Marcus's purple face, saw the fear there, the desperation, the pathetic weakness of a man who'd only ever known how to hurt people smaller than himself. And he let go. Marcus gasped, sucking air into his burning lungs. Caleb stood up slowly. His whole body was shaking. Briggs moved in with handcuffs. "Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for attempted murder-assault conspiracy, and about 20 other charges I'll be documenting on the ride back to Dusty Creek." Marcus tried to speak, but his damaged throat only produced a hoarse croak. "Save it," Briggs said. "You can talk to the federal marshal when he arrives next week." Two of the townsmen hauled Marcus to his feet and threw him over a horse. He hung there like a sack of grain defeated broken, finally facing the consequences of 5 years of terror. Caleb walked to the wagon on legs that barely supported him. Ruth sat in the back, baby Rose sleeping against her chest. Her face was pale, exhausted, still beautiful despite everything. "You stopped," she said softly. "You asked me to. Most men wouldn't have listened. I'm not most men." Ruth reached out and touched his face. Her fingers were cold, trembling. "You're not," she agreed. "You're something else entirely." Doc Owens appeared beside the wagon. "We need to move. Ruth's lost too much blood. I need to get her somewhere I can work properly." "How far to Virginia City?" Caleb asked. 6 hours if we push it. Maybe 8 if we're careful." "We're careful. I didn't save them just to lose them on the trail." Thomas took the reins. The wagon started moving again, slower now, more careful on the rough terrain. Caleb rode alongside, keeping watch even though the danger had passed. Bull Henriksen fell in beside him. "Hell of a night," Bull said. "Hell of a week." "What happens now?" Caleb looked at the wagon, at Ruth's silhouette in the moonlight holding her daughter close. "Now we get them to Virginia City, get Ruth proper medical care, make sure the baby's healthy." "And after that?" Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he admitted. "I spent 14 years knowing exactly what I was running from. Never spent much time thinking about what I was running to. Maybe it's time to start. Maybe it is." They rode in silence as the night stretched on. The moon climbed higher, then began its descent toward morning. Stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to the small dramas of men and women on the earth below. Ruth slept fitfully, waking each time the wagon jolted, checking on Rose before drifting off again. The baby slept the sleep of the newly born, unaware of how close she'd come to never taking her first breath. As dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out Eleanor's wedding ring. He held it in his palm, watching the first rays of sunlight catch the gold. "I loved you," he said quietly. "I loved you and Lily more than anything, and I'll carry you both with me for the rest of my life." He paused. "But I think it's time I started living again. Really living. Not just existing in the mountains waiting to die." He closed his fingers around the ring. "I hope you understand. I hope you forgive me. And I hope wherever you are, you're proud of what I did tonight." The wagon crested a ridge, and Virginia City appeared in the valley below. Buildings, people, civilization, a new beginning. Caleb slipped Eleanor's ring back into his pocket next to his heart where it belonged. Then he rode forward to guide the wagon home. Virginia City's hospital was a 2-story building that smelled of carbolic acid and desperation. Caleb paced the hallway outside Ruth's room, wearing a path in the wooden floor. 3 hours. She'd been in there for 3 hours. Doc Owens had taken one look at Ruth when they arrived and started shouting orders. Nurses appeared, equipment was wheeled in, doors closed, and Caleb had been left standing in the hallway with blood on his shirt and fear in his heart. Maggie sat on a bench nearby, baby Rose sleeping in her arms. "She's going to be fine," Maggie said for the 10th time. "Ruth's a fighter. She lost a lot of blood. And these doctors have more supplies than Henry ever did. Better equipment, more experience." Maggie's voice was firm. "She's going to be fine." Caleb wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe her. The door opened. A doctor emerged, gray-haired and exhausted. His hands were clean now, but his apron still carried traces of Ruth's blood. "Mr. Donovan, how is she?" The doctor removed his spectacles and rubbed his eyes. "Mrs. Webb lost a significant amount of blood. Her heart rhythm was irregular when she arrived. We've stabilized her, but the next 24 hours will be critical." "Can I see her?" "She's sleeping. But yes, you can sit with her." The doctor paused. "Are you family?" Caleb hesitated. "I'm a friend." "She was calling your name. In her delirium. Kept saying Caleb promised. Over and over." The doctor's eyes were curious. "Must be some promise." "It is." Caleb entered the room. Ruth lay on a narrow bed, her face pale against the white pillow. Her breathing was shallow but steady. A nurse had cleaned her up, put her in a fresh gown, brushed the tangles from her hair. She looked peaceful, young, like the woman she might have been if Marcus Webb had never touched her. Caleb pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. "Hey," he said softly. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm here, just like I promised." Ruth didn't respond. "Rose is fine. Maggie's got her. She's got a good set of lungs on her, that one. Doc says she's healthy as a horse." Caleb paused. "She looks like you. Same eyes, same stubborn set to her chin." Still nothing. "You need to wake up Ruth. That little girl needs her mother. And his voice cracked. "I need to know you're okay. I've spent 14 years watching people I love slip away. I can't do it again." Ruth's hand moved. Her fingers found his and held on. "Caleb." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You talk too much." Relief crashed over him like a wave. "You're awake. Hard to sleep with all your jawing." Ruth's eyes fluttered open. They were unfocused, heavy with exhaustion, but alive. "Rose. She's perfect. Sleeping in Maggie's arms. Marcus. In custody. Sheriff Briggs has him locked up tight." Ruth's grip on his hand tightened. "It's over. It's over." A tear slid down her cheek. "I keep waiting to wake up. Waiting for this to be a dream." "It's not a dream." Caleb squeezed her hand. "You're safe. Rose is safe. And I'm not going anywhere." Ruth's eyes searched his face. "Why? Why did you do all this, risk your life for a woman you didn't know?" "I told you. I made a promise." "Promises don't usually involve gunfights and burning barns." "My promises do, apparently." Ruth almost smiled, then her face crumpled and she began to cry. Caleb didn't know what to do. He'd never been good with tears. Eleanor used to tease him about it, said he turned into a statue every time she got emotional. But Ruth wasn't Eleanor, and he wasn't the same man he'd been 14 years ago. He leaned forward and gathered her into his arms, held her while she sobbed against his chest. Let her grief and relief and exhaustion pour out in a flood of tears and broken words. "I thought I was going to die," she gasped. "In that clearing, I thought I was going to die and Rose would never know her mother. But you didn't die. You survived, just like you've been surviving for 2 years. I don't want to just survive anymore." Ruth pulled back, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "I want to live. I want Rose to have a real life, not just existence, not just getting through each day. Real life, with joy and love and hope." "You'll have it. I'll make sure of it." How can you make sure of anything? Marcus has money, connections. Even from jail he could... Marcus is going to federal prison. Sheriff Briggs is making sure the charges stick. Attempted murder, assault, conspiracy. Caleb's voice hardened. He's never touching you again. You don't know that. I know that I'll spend every day of my life making sure of it. Ruth stared at him. That sounds like another promise. It is. You barely know me. I know enough. Caleb took her hand again. I know you're brave. I know you're strong. I know you protected your daughter with your own body, even when you could barely stand. I know you asked me to show mercy when I wanted to show violence. That's not knowing someone. Then let me know more. Let me stay. Let me help you build that real life you're talking about. Ruth was quiet for a long moment. Her fingers trembled in his grip. I'm scared, she finally said. Of what? Of trusting again. Of believing someone when they say they won't hurt me. She looked away. Marcus said all the right things too. Before we married. Said he'd protect me. Cherish me. Love me. I'm not Marcus. I know you're not. But my heart doesn't know how to tell the difference anymore. Caleb nodded slowly. Then we take it slow. No pressure. No expectations. Just time. Time for you to heal. Time for Rose to grow. Time for both of us to figure out what comes next. What if I never figure it out? Then I'll wait. Ruth's eyes filled with fresh tears. Why would you wait for someone as broken as me? Because I'm broken too. Caleb's voice was rough. Because I've spent 14 years hiding from the world, telling myself I was protecting my heart, when really I was just punishing myself. Because when I saw you in that street bleeding and scared and still fighting to protect your baby, I saw something I'd forgotten existed. What? Hope. The word hung between them like a bridge. Ruth reached up and touched his face. Her fingers were cold, trembling, but gentle. I don't know what the future holds, she said. I don't know if I can be what you need. I don't need you to be anything except yourself. Myself is pretty messed up right now. Aren't we all? Ruth almost laughed. It came out as a sob instead. You're a strange man, Caleb Donovan. I've been told that before. I mean it as a compliment. I know. A knock at the door interrupted them. Maggie entered baby Rose in her arms. Someone's hungry and won't settle for anyone but her mother. Ruth's whole face changed when she saw her daughter. The fear and exhaustion melted away, replaced by something fierce and tender and absolutely unbreakable. Give her to me. Maggie placed Rose in Ruth's arms. The baby immediately began rooting, searching for her mother's breast. I'll give you privacy, Caleb said, standing. Stay. Ruth's voice was soft. Please. I'm tired of being alone. So Caleb stayed, sat in the chair beside her bed while she nursed her daughter, watched the connection forming between mother and child, felt something in his chest that he hadn't felt in 14 years. Like maybe the world wasn't just darkness and loss. Like maybe there was still beauty in it. Like maybe he'd finally found something worth fighting for. The door burst open. Sheriff Briggs stood in the doorway, face pale, breathing hard. We got a problem. Caleb was on his feet instantly. What kind of problem? Marcus escaped. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Ruth clutched Rose tighter against her chest. No, that's not possible. You had him... His brother-in-law, Briggs interrupted. The one who runs the bank. He bribed 2 of my deputies. They let Marcus out an hour ago. An hour? Caleb grabbed Briggs by the collar. You're telling me he's had an hour head start? I just found out. The deputies are in custody. But Marcus? Briggs shook his head. He's gone. And he took a rifle with him. He's coming here. Ruth's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. He's coming to finish what he started. We don't know that. Briggs started. I know Marcus. I lived with him for 2 years. He doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. And he never lets anyone make him look weak. Caleb grabbed his rifle from where he'd left it by the door. How many men do you have? 4 deputies. 2 of them I trust. The other 2 are the ones who let Marcus go. That's not enough. It's what I've got. Bull Henriksen appeared behind Briggs. It's what we've got. Bull. Caleb nodded. Thought you'd gone back to Dusty Creek. Started to. Got halfway there and realized I'd just be running from my own conscience again. Bull's face was grim. I've been running my whole life. Time to stand and fight. We need to move Ruth, Caleb said. Get her somewhere safer. She can't be moved. Doc Owens had appeared in the hallway. I heard the commotion. Ruth's heart is still weak. Moving her now could kill her. Staying here could kill her too. Then we protect her here. Bull checked his pistol. Post guards at every entrance. Set up positions with clear sight lines. Marcus has a rifle. He could shoot from distance. Then we need to find him first. In a city this size, he could be anywhere. Ruth's voice cut through the argument. He'll go to the church. Everyone turned to look at her. Marcus is Catholic. Old school. Whenever he was planning something terrible, he'd go to confession first. Like that somehow absolved him before the sin. There's a church 2 blocks from here, Briggs said. St. Michael's. That's where he'll be. Ruth's eyes met Caleb's. Go. Stop him before he can get to us. I'm not leaving you unprotected. Bull can stay. Maggie's got her rifle. Doc has his pistol. Ruth's jaw set. You're the only one who can stop Marcus. You've proven that twice already. Caleb hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him not to leave, but Ruth was right. If Marcus was planning an attack, the best defense was offense. Bull, you stay here. Don't let anyone through that door except me. You got it. Caleb looked at Ruth one last time. I'll be back. I know you will. He ran. The church was exactly where Briggs said it would be. A small wooden structure with a cross on top and stained glass windows that caught the afternoon light. Caleb slowed as he approached, drew his pistol, moved carefully toward the front door. It was open. He slipped inside. The church was empty except for one figure kneeling at the altar. Marcus Webb. His clothes were dirty and torn from his escape. A rifle leaned against the pew beside him. His hands were clasped in prayer, but his lips were moving silently. Caleb raised his pistol. Stand up, slowly. Marcus didn't move. You know I used to come here as a boy. My mother would drag me every Sunday, made me confess every little sin, lying about chores, taking extra sweets, thinking impure thoughts about the neighbor's daughter. I said stand up. She told me confession would save my soul, that God forgave everything if you just asked nicely enough. Marcus laughed. It was a hollow, broken sound. But some sins are too big for forgiveness, aren't they? This isn't a confession booth, Marcus. Stand up and put your hands where I can see them. Marcus finally turned. His face was haggard, his eyes wild. I loved her, you know. Ruth. I actually loved her. In my own way. You beat her. Because she made me angry. Because she looked at me like I was nothing. Because she... Marcus's voice cracked. Because she was going to leave me, just like everyone leaves me. That's not love. That's possession. What would you know about it, living alone in your mountains for 14 years, running from your dead wife's memory? Marcus sneered. At least I tried to hold on to something. At least I fought for what was mine. She was never yours. She was my wife. She was a person, not property. Marcus's hand moved toward the rifle. Don't. Caleb's pistol didn't waver. I'll put you down before you touch it. You think I'm afraid of dying? Marcus laughed again. I've got nothing left. Ruth's gone. The ranch is finished. My reputation's destroyed. You've taken everything from me. You did that yourself. No. Marcus's eyes locked onto Caleb's. You did. You walked into my town, touched my wife, turned my men against me, made me look weak. You were always weak, Marcus. You just hid it behind violence. Something snapped behind Marcus's eyes. He lunged for the rifle. Caleb fired. The bullet caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around. The rifle clattered to the floor. Marcus crashed into the altar, sending candles and crosses scattering. "Stay down!" Caleb advanced, pistol trained on Marcus's chest. But Marcus wasn't done. He pulled a knife from his boot and threw himself at Caleb. They went down hard, crashing through a pew. The pistol flew from Caleb's hand. Marcus's knife slashed at his face, missing by inches. Caleb caught Marcus's wrist, twisted. Bones cracked. Marcus screamed, but still he fought. They rolled across the church floor, grappling, fighting for control of the knife. Marcus's wounded shoulder pumped blood onto Caleb's shirt. His free hand clawed at Caleb's eyes. Caleb drove his knee into Marcus's wounded shoulder. Marcus screamed again, his grip weakening. Caleb tore the knife away and threw it across the room. Then he got his hands around Marcus's throat. Not to kill, just to hold, to control. "It's over," Caleb growled. "It's done. You're done." Marcus struggled, but the fight was going out of him. Blood loss, exhaustion, the final acceptance of defeat. "She'll never love you," Marcus gasped. "She's damaged, broken. You'll never have what I had." "I don't want what you had. I want what you were too stupid to see." "And what's that?" "Partnership, respect, someone to walk beside, not drag behind." Caleb's grip tightened. "That's what love looks like. You never understood that." Sheriff Briggs appeared in the church doorway, gun drawn. "We got him. We got him." Caleb released Marcus's throat and stood up. "He's going to need a doctor. Bullet wound in the shoulder." "I'll make sure he gets one. This time there won't be any escape." Deputies swarmed in to take custody. Marcus was hauled to his feet, handcuffed, and dragged toward the door. He stopped just before the threshold. "This isn't over, Donovan. You hear me? This isn't—" "It's over." Caleb's voice was flat. "And if you ever come near Ruth or Rose again, I won't aim for your shoulder." Marcus's eyes went wide with something that might have been fear. Then he was gone. Caleb stood alone in the church, surrounded by overturned pews and scattered candles. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. His knuckles were raw. His whole body ached. But it was done. Finally, truly done. He walked back to the hospital. Ruth was awake when he entered, Rose sleeping in her arms. Maggie sat in the corner. Bull stood guard by the window. "Is he," Ruth started, "in custody? For real this time?" Caleb sank into the chair beside her bed. "He won't be escaping again." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "It's really over. It's really over." She reached for his hand, then froze. "You're hurt." "Just a scratch." "You're covered in blood." "Most of it's his." Ruth shook her head, but she was almost smiling. "You need a doctor." "I need a drink." "You need both." "I'll settle for this." Caleb took her hand, held it, let the silence stretch between them. Baby Rose made a small sound in her sleep, a contented sigh, the sound of an infant who had no idea how close she'd come to losing everything. "What happens now?" Ruth asked softly. "Now you heal. Rose grows. We figure out the rest as it comes." "That's not much of a plan." "It's more plan than I've had in 14 years. Ruth laughed. It was weak, exhausted, but real. "I want to go back to Dusty Creek," she said suddenly. Caleb blinked. "What?" "Not right away. When I'm stronger. When Rose is bigger." Ruth's eyes were distant. "That town needs to change. The people who helped us, Thomas and Maggie and Daniel, they deserve better than what Marcus built. I want to help build something new. You want to go back to the place that hurt you. I want to prove that it couldn't break me." Caleb studied her face, the determination there, the strength that had survived 2 years of hell and come out the other side. "Then we'll go back together." "You'd do that? Leave your mountains?" "I left them 3 days ago. Haven't missed them once." Ruth's grip on his hand tightened. Caleb? I know. Slow. No pressure. No expectations. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. But I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere. Ruth's eyes glistened. You're a good man, Caleb Donovan. I'm trying to be. You're succeeding. They sat in silence as the afternoon faded into evening. Maggie quietly left to find food. Bull took up position outside the door. And somewhere in Virginia City, Marcus Webb sat in a cell that would be his home for the next 30 years. Ruth fell asleep with Rose in her arms and Caleb's hand in hers. And Caleb, for the first time in 14 years, felt something that might have been peace. Not the empty peace of the mountains. Not the numb peace of avoidance. Real peace. The kind that comes from doing something that matters. The kind that comes from protecting someone who needed protecting. The kind that comes from finding against all odds a reason to start living again. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new opportunities for everything to go wrong. But for now, in this moment, Ruth was safe, Rose was healthy, and Caleb Donovan had kept his promise. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. 6 months passed like water over stone, smoothing the sharp edges of memory. Ruth stood on the porch of her new home, watching Rose sleep in the cradle Caleb had built with his own hands. The baby had grown strong in the months since her birth. Round cheeks, bright eyes, a laugh that could fill any room with warmth. Dusty Creek had changed too. Thomas Finch ran the general store with Daniel's help now. Maggie Porter's boarding house was full every night with travelers who'd heard the town was safe again. Doc Owens had rebuilt his clinic bigger and better than before. And Sheriff Briggs walked his rounds with his head held high, finally the lawman he'd always wanted to be. But some wounds took longer to heal. Ruth's hand went to her chest, where her heart still raced when she heard footsteps behind her. Where fear still lived, even though Marcus Webb was rotting in federal prison 1,000 miles away. You're doing it again. Caleb's voice came from the doorway. He moved to stand beside her, not touching, just present. He'd learned to read her moods over these 6 months. Knew when she needed space. Knew when she needed closeness. Knew the difference between fear and grief, and the complicated territory between. Doing what? Worrying about things that ain't going to happen. Old habits. I know. Caleb leaned against the porch railing. But you're safe now. Rose is safe. Marcus is never getting out of that prison. You can't know that. I can know that I'll spend every day of my life making sure of it. Ruth looked at him, really looked, at the silver in his hair and the lines around his eyes. At the hands that had killed for her and held her daughter with such gentleness. At the man who'd walked into her hell and refused to leave. Why do you stay? We've been through this, Ruth. I know, but I still don't understand. She turned to face him fully. You could go back to your mountains, live the quiet life you had before. Instead, you're here building cradles and fixing fences and watching over a woman who still flinches when the wind blows. You want the truth? Always. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I stayed because you reminded me what it felt like to be human. I stayed because your daughter looks at me like I'm worth something. I stayed because every morning I wake up next to you, I feel like maybe I didn't fail Eleanor and Lily after all. Caleb. I know I can't replace what you lost. I know I can't undo what Marcus did. But I can be here. I can protect you. I can love you if you'll let me. He met her eyes. I've been waiting 6 months for you to tell me to go. And every day you don't is another day I get to pretend I might have a future worth living. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. You're not pretending, she whispered. You have a future. Here. With us. Ruth. I love you. The words came out before she could stop them. I've been afraid to say it. Afraid that saying it would break the spell. But I love you, Caleb Donovan. I love the way you look at Rose. I love the way you hold me when the nightmares come. I love that you never ask me to be anything other than what I am." Caleb's face transformed. The walls he'd built around his heart 14 years thick crumbled in an instant. "Say it again." "I love you." He crossed the distance between them in 2 steps. His hands found her face, tilting it up toward his. His eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, for fear, for any sign that she didn't mean it. He found none. "I love you too." His voice broke on the words. "I've loved you since you grabbed my hand in that wagon and asked me to promise I'd take care of Rose. I've loved you since you told me to show mercy when I wanted to show violence. I've loved you." Ruth kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative. 2 broken people learning how to fit together. But then it deepened, and all the walls came down, and for a long, perfect moment, the past didn't matter. The pain didn't matter. Only this. Only them. Only the future they were building together. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. "Well," Ruth laughed through her tears, "that took long enough." "I was trying to be respectful." "You were trying to be stubborn." "Same thing mostly." Rose chose that moment to wake up. Her cry split the air, demanding attention with the lungs she'd inherited from her mother. Ruth moved toward the cradle, but Caleb stopped her. "Let me." He lifted Rose with practiced ease. The baby had grown used to him over these months. Stopped crying the moment she felt his arms around her. Looked up at his face with eyes that already knew him. "Hey, little one." Caleb's voice was soft. "Your mama and I were just having an important conversation. Sorry we woke you." Rose grabbed his finger and held on. "She knows," Ruth said softly. "Children always know when something important happens." "What does she know?" "That she has a father now. A real one." Caleb's eyes went wide. "Ruth, I'm not. You're exactly what a father is. You protect her. You provide for her. You die for her." Ruth moved to stand beside him, looking down at her daughter. "Blood doesn't make a family, Caleb. Love does. I don't know how to be a father. I barely had time with Lily before. You'll learn. We'll learn together." Ruth touched his arm. "Unless you don't want, I want." Caleb's voice was fierce. "God, Ruth, I want. I just never thought I'd get another chance." "Neither did I." Ruth leaned her head against his shoulder. "But here we are." They stood together on the porch, watching Dusty Creek wake up around them. The town that had nearly destroyed Ruth. The town that had given her a second chance. The town that would see Rose grow up safe and loved and free. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Daniel Finch stood on the porch steps, hat in hand, face serious. "Mr. Donovan, Mrs." He caught himself. "Miss Ruth, Sheriff Briggs needs you at his office. Both of you." "What's wrong?" Caleb's hand moved instinctively toward his pistol. "Nothing's wrong. He got a telegram this morning, something about Mr. Webb." Ruth's whole body went rigid. "Marcus?" "I don't know the details, ma'am. Sheriff just said to come quick." Caleb looked at Ruth. "Stay here. I'll find out what's going on." "No." Ruth's jaw set. "Whatever it is, I need to hear it. I'm done hiding from his shadow." They walked to the sheriff's office together, Rose in Ruth's arms. The morning sun was already hot, promising another scorching summer day. People nodded as they passed, smiled, waved. 6 months ago, these same people had looked away while Marcus beat Ruth in the street. Now they greeted her like a neighbor, like a friend, like someone who belonged. It was amazing what could change in 6 months. Sheriff Briggs stood when they entered his office. His face was unreadable. "Ruth, Caleb, thanks for coming. Daniel said you got a telegram about Marcus." Ruth's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly against Rose's blanket. "I did." Briggs picked up a piece of paper from his desk. Came in this morning from the federal marshal in Kansas. What does it say? Briggs was quiet for a moment. Then he looked up. Marcus Webb died in prison 3 days ago. The words hit Ruth like a physical blow. She swayed, and Caleb's arm went around her immediately. Dead. Ruth's voice was barely audible. How? Fight with another prisoner. The telegram says it was over a game of cards. Marcus accused the other man of cheating. The other man had a shiv. Briggs set the paper down. He didn't suffer. It was quick. Ruth's legs gave out. Caleb caught her, lowered her into a chair, kept his arms around her while her whole body shook. Ruth. His voice was gentle. Ruth, talk to me. I don't know what to feel. She looked up at him with wild eyes. I should be glad. He can never hurt me again. He can never hurt Rose. But I just feel empty. Is that wrong? No. Caleb knelt in front of her, taking her face in his hands. You spent 2 years of your life tied to that man. Even when he was in prison, part of you was still connected to him, still afraid of him. Now that connection is severed, and you don't know who you are without it. How do you know? Because that's how I felt when Eleanor died. Lost, untethered, like part of my identity had been cut away, and I didn't know what was left. Ruth's tears spilled over. What did you do? I ran away for 14 years. I hid in the mountains and tried to forget I was human. Caleb wiped her tears with his thumbs. Don't do what I did. Don't run. Stay. Feel it. Let it hurt. And then let it heal. I don't know if I can. You can. Because you're not alone. Because you have Rose. Because you have me. He pressed his forehead to hers. Because you're the strongest person I've ever met. And I've met a lot of people trying to kill me. Despite everything, Ruth laughed. It was wet and broken and beautiful. You're terrible at comfort. I know. I'm working on it. Briggs cleared his throat. There's more. Caleb looked up. More? Marcus left a will. His brother-in-law tried to contest it, but the federal court upheld it. Everything Marcus owned, the ranch, the cattle, the bank accounts, it all goes to his legal heir. His legal heir? Ruth's brow furrowed. Marcus didn't have any family. Briggs held up the telegram. According to this, his legal heir is his wife, Ruth McAllister Webb. The silence that followed was deafening. What? Ruth's voice was barely a whisper. You're his widow now. Everything he owned belongs to you. Briggs almost smiled. Including the biggest cattle ranch in Montana Territory. Ruth stared at him, then at Caleb, then at the telegram in Briggs's hand. That's... She couldn't find words. That's... justice, Caleb said quietly. That's justice. The man who tried to destroy you ended up giving you everything. I don't want his money. I don't want his ranch. Then sell it. Use the money to build something good, something he would have hated. Caleb's eyes gleamed. Build a school, a hospital, a shelter for women like you, women who need a safe place to escape. Ruth's expression shifted. A shelter. A place where women can bring their children, where they can heal, where nobody beats them and nobody tells them they're property. Caleb took her hand. Turn his legacy into something that would make him roll in his grave. Ruth was quiet for a long moment. The idea took root in her mind, grew, branches bloomed. He would hate that, she said slowly. He would absolutely hate that. That's the point. Ruth looked down at Rose, sleeping peacefully in her arms. This baby who had survived against all odds. Who would grow up never knowing her biological father's cruelty? Who would learn that women were strong, and men could be kind, and love was something you built, not something you took? Yes, Ruth said. Yes, I'll do it. I'll build something good out of all the bad. Briggs nodded. I'll help however I can. So will the town. Most of us owe you a debt we can never repay. You owe me nothing. We owe you everything. Briggs straightened. You showed us what courage looks like. It's the least we can do to help you show others. They walked back through town hand in hand, Rose sleeping between them. The news would spread fast. By nightfall, everyone would know that Marcus Webb was dead and Ruth was rich. But none of that mattered as much as the simple fact of walking beside Caleb, feeling his warmth, knowing that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Maggie was waiting on her porch when they passed the boarding house. Heard the news. The old woman's eyes were sharp. How are you feeling? Confused, Ruth admitted. Relieved, sad, angry that I'm sad. That's grief. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't follow rules. Maggie descended the porch steps. But you've got good people around you. You'll get through it. Thank you, Maggie, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Maggie's expression turned serious. There's someone here to see you. Been waiting since this morning. I told him you'd be back, but he refused to leave. Ruth's body tensed. Who? Says his name is Samuel Hartley. The world stopped spinning. Caleb felt Ruth go rigid beside him, saw the blood drain from her face, understood in that instant exactly who Samuel Hartley was. Ruth. His voice was careful. Is that? Yes. Her voice was barely audible. That's him. Do you want me to send him away? No. Ruth took a deep breath. No, I need to see him. I need to know why he's here. I'll come with you. No. Ruth turned to face him. This is something I need to do alone. Please, wait here. Caleb wanted to argue. Every protective instinct screamed at him to stay by her side. But he saw the determination in her eyes and knew that this was her battle to fight. I'll be right here. If you need me, just call. Ruth kissed him quickly. Then she walked toward Maggie's boarding house, where the father of her child was waiting. Samuel Hartley was exactly as she remembered him. Tall, broad-shouldered, kind brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He stood when she entered the parlor, hat in his hands, face a mixture of hope and fear. Ruth. Samuel. They stood in silence, the weight of everything between them pressing down like a physical force. I heard what happened, Samuel finally said. The whole territory's been talking about it. The mountain man, the escape, the baby born on the trail. His eyes moved to Rose. Is she? Her name is Rose. She's beautiful. Samuel's voice cracked. She looks like you. Samuel, why are you here? I came back for you. The words rushed out. I know I left. I know I should have stayed, but I was scared. I had nothing to offer you and you were married and I thought... He trailed off. I thought I was doing the right thing by leaving. And now I know better. I heard about Marcus, about the prison, about the inheritance. Samuel stepped forward. Ruth, I can give you a life now. I've been working in Oregon, saving money, building a future. I want you to come with me, you and Rose. We can be a family. Ruth looked at him. This man who had given her comfort when she needed it most, who had planted a seed that grew into the daughter she loved more than life, who had left because he was scared and come back because he was hopeful. Samuel, I need to ask you something. Anything. Did you come back for me? Or did you come back because you heard Marcus died and I'm rich now? Samuel's face went pale. Ruth, that's not... Because I spent 2 years with a man who said all the right things, who made me believe he loved me, who turned into a monster the moment we were alone. Ruth's voice was steady. I can't do that again. I won't do that again. I'm not Marcus. I know you're not, but I need you to answer my question. When did you decide to come back, before or after you heard about the inheritance? Samuel was quiet for a long moment. His shoulders slumped. After, he admitted. I heard about it 3 weeks ago. I'd been thinking about coming back for months, but I kept telling myself I had nothing to offer. Then I heard about the money, and I thought maybe I finally had a chance. So the money mattered. It made the decision easier. Samuel looked up, anguish in his eyes. But it's not why I'm here. I'm here because I haven't stopped thinking about you since I left. I'm here because I wake up every morning wondering what you're doing. I'm here because I love you, Ruth. I always have. Ruth felt something in her chest. Not love, something more complicated. Gratitude, maybe, for the comfort he'd given her, for the daughter he'd helped create, but also anger, for the months he'd been gone, for the danger she'd faced alone, for the timing of his return. Samuel, I need you to listen to me. I'm listening. I'm not the same woman you left. The woman you knew was desperate and scared and clinging to any kindness she could find. That woman died somewhere on the trail between here and Virginia City. Ruth met his eyes. I'm someone else now. Someone stronger. Someone who doesn't need a man to save her. I'm not trying to save you. Aren't you? Ruth shook her head. You show up the moment Marcus dies. The moment I inherit his fortune. The moment I'm finally free. And you offer to take me away, give me a life, be a family. She paused. But I already have a life. I already have a family. Samuel's face fell. The mountain man. His name is Caleb, and yes. Ruth's voice softened. He's been here for 6 months, protecting me, supporting me, loving me without asking for anything in return. I could have been here too, if I'd known. That's the point, Samuel. You didn't stay to find out. Caleb did. Ruth took a step back. I'm grateful for what you gave me. Rose is the best thing that's ever happened to me. But I can't build a future with someone who only shows up when the path is easy. Ruth, please. I want you to be part of Rose's life, if you want to be, but as her father, not as my husband. Ruth held his gaze. Can you accept that? Samuel stood in silence for a long moment. Emotions crossed his face. Hope dying. Acceptance settling in. The slow realization that some chances once missed never come again. Yes, he finally said. If that's what you want, if that's what's best for Rose. It is. Samuel nodded slowly. Can I hold her? Just once? Ruth hesitated. Then she stepped forward and placed Rose gently in Samuel's arms. The carpenter looked down at his daughter's face. Tears spilled down his cheeks. He traced her features with one trembling finger, memorizing every detail. She's perfect, he whispered. Absolutely perfect. She is. I'll stay in town for a while. Find work. Be nearby if you need me. Samuel looked up. And if you ever change your mind, I won't. But thank you for understanding. Samuel handed Rose back to Ruth. Their hands touched for a moment. The connection that had brought them together still there, but different now. Diminished by time and distance, and the simple fact that Ruth had grown beyond the desperate woman he'd known. Goodbye, Ruth. Goodbye, Samuel. He walked out of the parlor without looking back. Ruth stood alone for a moment, holding her daughter, feeling the weight of the choice she'd just made. It was the right choice. She knew that. But it still hurt. Then she walked outside where Caleb was waiting exactly where she'd left him. He didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, just opened his arms and held her while she processed everything that had just happened. You okay? He finally asked. I will be. What did he want? What he couldn't have? Ruth looked up at him. I told him about us, about what we've built, about why I'm staying. What did he say? He accepted it. He wants to be part of Rose's life, and I said yes. Ruth paused. Are you okay with that? He's her father. You're her father. He's just the man who helped create her. Caleb's arms tightened around her. Then yes, I'm okay with it, as long as he understands that you're mine and Rose is ours, and this family belongs to us. He understands. Good. They walked back to their house together. The house that Caleb had helped build. The house where Rose would take her first steps. The house that would see birthdays and Christmases and all the ordinary miracles of a life well lived. That evening, they sat on the porch together, watching the sunset over Dusty Creek. Rose slept in her cradle between them. The heat of the day was finally breaking, giving way to the cool of evening. "I've been thinking," Caleb said. "About what?" "About what you said this morning. About blood not making a family." He reached into his pocket and pulled something out. "I want to make it official." Ruth's breath caught. In his palm lay a ring. Simple gold band. Nothing fancy. But clearly old. Clearly precious. "This was Eleanor's," Caleb said quietly. "I've been carrying it for 14 years. Couldn't bring myself to let it go. But I think—" He paused. "I think she'd want you to have it." "Caleb, I can't." "You can. Because Eleanor would have loved you. She would have seen what I see. A woman who survived hell and came out stronger. A mother who would die for her child. A person who turned tragedy into triumph." Caleb met her eyes. "She would have been honored to share this ring with you." Ruth's tears spilled over. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I'm asking you to be my wife, to let me be Rose's father, to build a life with me that neither of us ever thought we'd have." Caleb's voice broke. "I'm asking you to forgive me for not finding you sooner, for all the pain you went through before I walked into that street. There's nothing to forgive. Then say yes." Ruth looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the daughter sleeping between them, at the town that had nearly destroyed her and ended up saving her instead. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Caleb slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he kissed her slow and sweet, while the last light of day painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. They were married a month later in the small church at the center of Dusty Creek, the same church where Marcus had once confessed his sins. The same church that would now witness the beginning of something beautiful. Thomas Finch walked Ruth down the aisle. Maggie Porter stood as her witness. Bull Henriksen, former enemy turned trusted friend, stood beside Caleb as his best man. And Rose, 3 months old, now slept through the entire ceremony in Daniel Finch's careful arms. Afterward, there was music and dancing and more joy than Dusty Creek had seen in years. Ruth danced with her husband until her feet ached. Listened to toasts that made her laugh and cry in equal measure. Held her daughter and whispered promises about the future they would build. Later, alone with Caleb in their home, she lay with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Did you ever think it would end like this?" she asked. "No." Caleb's voice was rough. "I thought I'd die alone in those mountains. I thought my story was over before it started. And now I know better. Now I know that endings are just beginnings in disguise. That loss doesn't have to be permanent. That even a man who's spent 14 years running from his ghosts can find his way home." Ruth rose on her elbow to look at his face. "Is that what this is, home? Your home?" Caleb touched her face. "You and Rose. This town. This life. Everything I never thought I'd have again. I love you, Caleb Donovan. I love you, Ruth Donovan." She smiled at the sound of her new name. Ruth Donovan. A name without bruises attached to it. A name that meant safety and love and second chances. "What now?" she asked. "Now we live. We raise Rose. We build that shelter you talked about. We help people who need helping." Caleb pulled her close. "We grow old together and never forget how lucky we are." "That sounds like a good plan. It's the only plan that matters." Ruth settled against his chest again. Outside, the sounds of Dusty Creek drifted through the window. A horse nickering, a dog barking, a child laughing somewhere in the distance. The sounds of a town that had learned to hope again. The sounds of home. Years later, people would tell the story of the mountain man who rode into Dusty Creek and changed everything. They would speak of Ruth Donovan, who turned her worst enemy's legacy into a haven for women escaping violence. They would remember the little girl named Rose, who grew up to become a teacher just like her mother always wanted. But mostly, they would remember the love that had saved them all, the love that had proven once and for all that it was never too late to start again, that it was never too late to find your way home. Caleb Donovan had spent 14 years running from his past. Ruth Donovan had spent 2 years surviving her present. Together they had found something neither of them ever expected, a future worth living, and that was exactly where they were meant to be.